Hey, welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're going to dive into this really powerful idea, one that's given hope to people for literally thousands of years, especially when it feels like you're on the losing side of history. I mean, have you ever felt that way? That feeling like you're the last one standing for something, like you're holding on to a belief or, I don't know, a standard that it seems like everyone else has just let go of. It's a really isolating feeling, right? Watching a cause you love just shrink, or seeing a community you care about totally lose its way. So yeah, what do you do in a moment like that? Well, that's what this explainer is all about. We're going to explore this really fascinating answer. It's a historical theological concept called the remnant. And it's basically this idea of a small group that just holds on. They carry the torch, and in the end, they become the seed for whatever comes next. All right, so our first stop on this journey is a story about a kingdom that is right on the brink of total collapse. And in this story, we're going to find the very first key characteristic of what a remnant is. It all kicks off with a test, a really tough test of just waiting. Okay, so we're jumping into the ancient text of 1 Samuel, and I want you to just picture this. King Saul and his army, they're facing this absolutely massive enemy force. The odds are completely stacked against them, and while they're waiting for the prophet Samuel to show up, panic starts to creep in. I mean, soldiers are literally deserting, they're running away. And the king himself, his nerve is starting to crack. And just how dire was it? Get this, the army had shrunk to just 600 men. That's it, a tiny little group left behind with their panicked king because the vast majority had already taken off. So in his panic, the king does the one thing he was told not to do. He disobeys a direct command. And when the prophet Samuel finally arrives, he lays into him with this really sharp rebuke. And right here, this is the key takeaway for us. The king's failure to just wait, it didn't just scatter his people. It also showed us the very first trait of a remnant. They're the ones who endure, the ones who stay faithful even when their leadership totally fails the test. Okay, so a remnant endures. Check. But is that all it is? Is it just about being tough enough to stick around? Well, our next source from the book of Romans says, nope, there's more to it. It introduces a really vital new piece to this puzzle. And that new piece is grace. Now, before we go any further, let's just make sure we're all on the same page with what that word means here. In this context, grace is basically a gift. It's completely unearned, it's not a reward you get for good behavior, and it's not a prize for being the best. It's a free choice, a gift, period. And that idea, it is absolutely key for what we're about to talk about. So the writer here, the Apostle Paul, he's wrestling with this massive question. A lot of his own people had just flat out rejected his message. So did that mean God's whole plan had failed? Was everyone just abandoned? To figure this out, he actually looks back in time to another moment, to a prophet named Elijah who felt completely and totally alone. I mean, Elijah was convinced he was the last faithful person left on earth. But here's the thing, Elijah wasn't alone. Not even close. God's answer to him was pretty stunning. There was a hidden remnant of 7,000 people who had kept the faith. Now, these weren't famous people. They weren't powerful people. But they were there, and they were preserved, not because they were so strong, but because of something else entirely. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the argument. What Paul is saying is that a remnant isn't some club for perfect people who earned their way in. It's not about human effort at all. Instead, it's a group that's chosen by grace. It's a divine choice, a gift. So what that means is, being part of the remnant has nothing to do with being better than anyone else. It's all about being chosen. All right, let's recap. A remnant endures, and it's chosen by grace. Got it. But what happens when the entire group just fails? Like, when everyone messes up big time? Is it just game over? Well, our third case study from the prophet Jeremiah tackles that exact question head on. And what we see here is a total, unmitigated catastrophe. After generations of what the text calls disobedience, the whole kingdom was destroyed. The people were rounded up and literally forced to march into exile in Babylon. I mean, from any human perspective, this was it, the end of the line. The story was over, the nation was just gone. But even in this moment of complete and total failure, this idea of the remnant offers a path forward. It's amazing. The story sort of unfolds in 4 steps. You have the disobedience, the sin. That leads to the consequence, which is exile in Babylon. But it doesn't stop there. Then comes this call for the remnant to actually return home. And this isn't just about packing up and moving back. It's about renewing a completely broken relationship. And this is the incredible promise that's given to that little group that comes back. Their past failures, they don't disqualify them. Instead, they get this invitation to a totally fresh start, what's called an everlasting covenant, a sacred, unbreakable agreement. This adds a really powerful layer to our whole definition, right? The remnant idea also includes forgiveness and this incredible promise that there is always a way back. So we've got 3 pieces of the puzzle now: endurance, grace, and redemption. But there is one final, absolutely crucial element we need to talk about. See, a remnant isn't just some passive group that manages to survive. No, it has a voice. It actually makes a sound. So what does that sound like? I mean, really, when everything looks bleak and you are just surrounded by despair, what is the voice of this remnant? What do they sound like? To find out, we're going to turn to the Psalms, which is this amazing collection of ancient songs and poems. And this is the sound. Think about that for a second. Even while crying out for help in the middle of the crisis, the writer declares trust and then ends with a song of praise. Now, this isn't some naive, everything's fine kind of optimism. It is a defiant choice to focus on hope, even when the circumstances are just awful. And that active praise, that is the final defining characteristic of a remnant. All right, so we've looked at 4 different sources, and each one gave us a different piece of the picture. Now it's time to put it all together. Let's build our complete definition of what a remnant really is. So when we pull all these threads together, what do we actually have? It becomes clear that a remnant isn't just, the leftovers. It's the group that endures through crisis when everyone else falls away. It's a group that gets that their spot isn't earned by being awesome. It's chosen by grace. It's a gift. It's also a group that knows that failure is not the end of the story, because redemption is always on the table. And finally, it's a group that keeps a voice of hope and praise, no matter how dark things seem. And this, I think, is why this whole idea has stuck around for so long. It gives you a way to find meaning and purpose when you don't have the power, when you definitely don't have the numbers on your side. It shifts the goal. Purpose isn't about winning. It's about perspective. It's about faithfulness. Which really just leaves us with one last thought to chew on. You know that old saying, history is written by the victors? Well, this whole idea of the remnant suggests that maybe there's another story happening at the same time, one that's usually unfolding in the quiet margins. So the question I want to leave you with is, who's telling that story? And maybe more importantly, are any of us listening? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.